Now I'm going to look at a 20 marker. And a 20 marker always says with reference to the item. Always. Which means you must reference the item. And sociological studies. In a 20 marker, if you must use a reference to the item, making it clear by saying in the item, and you must use 2 studies. And the 2 studies will come from those articles that you've read. So Zadesh, Rosenil, Bunsell, you're given 6 studies, and you must use those studies, 2 of those studies in the 20 to get above the bottom band. Strengths and weaknesses of quantitative data. Be very careful, because it's easy in the stress of the exam to think it says qualitative, and then if it doesn't say that, you're in trouble. So quantitative meaning numerical data. And whenever I do a 20, I always must plan these because they are tricky, even when they look nice and straightforward. I always use perverts. So practical, ethical, representative, and representative's partner is always generalizability. Come together. Validity. Examples, which is where you must use the item and 2 studies. You won't get to that point, but if you ever see a 20 marker that you are absolutely horrified by and you're really struggling, first of all, you're going to take a deep breath, and then you're going to plan it using perverts. But if you use 2 studies and reference the item links to the question, it will pull up your AO2 quite dramatically. So if ever in doubt, always the item and 2 studies. Reliability and theory. Now, always use that as a structure, because I've read many an examiner's mark scheme, and it's always got these. It doesn't have perverts written on it, but so just come up with that. But it basically has these terms. The other thing it constantly says on them is it'd be good if you started with a definition in a 20. So that's I'm going to plan it, but I know they like a definition. So I'm going to say quantitative data, which is why you have so many mix and matches and gap fills and things, because definitions are really critical in a 5 marker and also in a 20. So quantitative data is data expressed numerically or in statistical form. Then I think, well, while I'm there, what I would put there is theory. Quantitative data. Oh, I need another box there. I need to do theory. This is the strength box. So positivists favour. So positivists favour quantitative methods. They favour quantitative methods, as it can establish, it will take a macro approach. They use quantitative methods, it establishes a macro approach, and you can establish patterns and trends. Diabetic association in the item. They're positivist as well. That's where I'm going to reference the item. Positivists favour quantitative methods or a macro approach, as you can establish patterns and trends. In the item, we can see the diabetic association favours scientific methods. This shows they are positivist. take a macro view of studying diabetes. So I think, well, positivists favour quantitative methods. Use of the item there. Oh, however, this is my however side. Interpretivists don't value quantitative methods, as they don't allow you to understand the meaning people attach to their actions or behaviours. That's my theory paragraph. Strengths, weaknesses. And I've used the item. It's gone. Only have to do it once. Make it harder than it needs to be. Just use it once. So that's my definition. Always start with the definition. Examiners love it. And I would actually then, once I start writing it, this is just my plan, do this as paragraph 1. Put that under the definition. Practical strengths. Okay, the practical strengths are quantitative methods like surveys and questionnaires. Quantitative methods like questionnaires and surveys. Practical, is time, money, and the ability to gain access to a group of people. So strengths are surveys and questionnaires are quick to complete because the questions are closed. And it means you can access larger samples. Making it more representative or accounting for differences. And you can apply results or generalize. They're quick, which means you can access samples. That's why it's in the access bit. Time. I kind of said that, didn't I? I said they were quick because the questions are closed. So I've got time there done. Access is done. Time is done. Right, money. Wow. Actually, on those studies, while I'm thinking about it, Roseneal accesses samples of 572. So I'm going to add in a study there. So I can access large samples. For example, in Roseneal's study, she can access 572 respondents. And it enables her to see that LATs, or couples who live apart but are together, are evenly spread across the population. So actually, Roseneal actually conducts a study or a survey of 572, and it enables her to see that LATs are evenly spread across the population. She thought it was just going to be young, but actually there are lots of couples who live apart but are still in a relationship. So that means I've got one study done, and I've used Roseneal's study. Okay, time, money, and then gaining some access. So I'm just going to move 2 seconds. I've stolen someone's classroom and they need it. Sorry, Laura. Right, I'm going to finish off in here. Okay, let's regroup. So that's my strengths. And the strengths are they're quick and you can access. Right, but they're only that way if they are really e-surveys. So in my weaknesses on this side, I'm going to say, however, quantitative methods can be expensive, particularly if they are postal questionnaires or if the survey is carried out face-to-face. It's the cost of travel for the interviewers or for the researcher. So actually, there is an added cost or money there if they are postal questionnaires. And also if the interviewer is going to do the survey face-to-face, if it's going to be a structured interview instead. So survey is carried out face-to-face via a structured interview. The cost of travel for the researcher. So that's a paragraph there, done and planned. Ethical. Well, quantitative methods, I need to keep focusing on the fact that it's quantitative is my question. Quantitative methods. Quantitative methods. Oops. Quantitative methods, like questionnaires, have the benefit of gaining informed consent quickly and freely. Is if they complete the questionnaire, they give consent. So actually questionnaires are pretty good as a quantitative method because you can actually gain consent very quickly. If they've completed the questionnaire, they give it. They're also anonymous. Oops. They're also largely anonymous or free from names and confidential, which is the respondent's details. They're also anonymous. They don't use names, and they tend to be confidential, free of the respondent's details, which increases the validity or truthfulness. Remember, always try and tell them you know what they mean, truthfulness. Always kind of add a little tiny little definition afterwards. This is why, and the British Crime Survey, or the crimes, it's called the Crime Survey now, the Crime Survey for England and Wales, talk crime today, the Crime Survey for England and Wales uses quantitative methods to measure the amount of domestic violence. Because it's anonymous and confidential, increases the validity. However, once completed, respondents are unlikely to be able to withdraw. However, once completed, the respondents are unlikely to be able to withdraw once sent, as their name and details are anonymous. Can't withdraw your questionnaire. I don't know which one was yours. Also, actually, when I think about it, it's my second study. In Holden's, when he does his questionnaire, he tends to use it for quite ethically problematic things as well. So I could put in here in ethics. So what we also find in Holden's study on debt, that actually quantitative methods are useful for sensitive subjects. Actually, what it's highlighting there is quantitative methods can be very useful for sensitive subjects around issues of debt and anxiety. That way I've done my second study. For Rep and Gen, kind of touched on this already, but quantitative methods have closed questions. Quantitative methods have closed questions, so are quick to complete and can access and can sample large representative samples. They have closed questions and so are quick to complete and can sample large representative samples and account for class, gender, and ethnicity. This means these methods mean you can apply results or generalize. Do you see how it's very clear when I'm using the Grover terms that I do know what they mean as I give a little explanation afterwards? However, quantitative methods have a low response rate. Quantitative methods have a low response rate, which does decrease the ability to represent and apply results. Okay. Validity, how true or accurate it is. More likely with our open questions and rapport, but we don't get that with quantitative method. We don't have open questions and we don't build a rapport. So I'd argue it's largely just a weakness here. So I'd say quantitative methods mean, so quantitative methods mean you have to approximate answers. Quantitative methods mean you have to approximate the answers. Oops. You have to approximate the answers. And you can't fully express or explore your feelings. This decreases. Furthermore. So furthermore, a rapport cannot be built or relationship. This means they are lower, this means quantitative methods are lower in validity. I'd argue no real strengths, just a weakness there. Don't do a paragraph for my studies in the item, that's just a prompt. So that one's done. And then for reliability, quantitative methods are easily repeated. As you've guessed it, the questions are all closed. They're closed. They're easily repeated as the questions are closed. It means you are likely to get the same or similar results. Weaknesses. However, cross-sectional surveys are often a snapshot and can't be reliable over long periods of time. Kind of a makeshifty one there, but it's true. Okay, so that's the plan, quite an extensive plan. But when I come to write it, I do my definition. Just to show you, do my definition. Theory comes next. So I'll do my strengths and my theory. My weaknesses of my period, they go as a paragraph. So definition, theory, strengths and weaknesses together as a paragraph. Then practical, strengths. Oops, it's blocked. Strengths, weaknesses. Then I do my ethical, strengths, weaknesses. Rep and gem, strengths, weaknesses. Validity, just weaknesses. Reliability, strengths. And weaknesses. Okay. Definition, theory, strengths and weaknesses. Theory, practical, ethical, rep and gen, validity, reliability, all in there. So I've got my clear paragraphs. That's how long it should generally be. But the strengths and weaknesses get mushed together as a paragraph, but we separate them into those stages. Hopefully that makes sense and helps you out a little bit with offering that structure. So I always use definition and I use perverts to pull out my points, to incorporate the item where I can, the studies where I can, and then developing them all. So yeah, that is our perverts for our quantitative methods.